of the game are changing rapidly. And as such, the bad guys, using very sophisticated tools and using machine learning, are using our tools and our way of doing what we do against us. So what we have to do as such is basically change how we're approaching the work we do, and we have to use different strategies, different tools, and really up our game. You've heard Bob say this for a long, long time. Where do these threats come from? Let me start the presentation here. Where do these threats come from? They come from email attachments, block executables. I've given an example before. We had one school, somebody in the finance office of the school got an email. Help, I'm trapped in Afghanistan. The email had an executable. The person couldn't open the executable. The person asked in the attachment, the person asked the next person next to them to help them, thereby launching a ransomware attack against the financial center of the school. Completely stupid stuff, but the executable, in that case, it's a private school. They're using a very random email solution. They didn't have proper spam filtering. They didn't have, attachment filtering, and they got blown up. Compromised websites. You hear all this drive-by clicking. You hear all this stuff with websites that are infected. I give the example, a year ago I was buying a Honda Pilot, and the friendly Honda sales guy, he sent me out to this website to look at this, one of those bins for the top, right? The thing did a drive-by click attack on my machine, and I got a ransomware thing. I clicked on something pretty normal, but it was a bad website. It wasn't Honda's. So how can we deal with that? Well, one of the first things we can do, if you haven't done this already, is go into your DNS and uncheck use root hints, and uncheck use root hints if nothing's available. Get rid of root hints completely. And for your DNS forwarder, do not use Google DNS. Go use OpenDNS, which is now Cisco Umbrella is the new name. You can do that for free. They're going to just take off the top where Google wouldn't do it. They're going to take off the top the known malicious sites. Now, that's not everything, but it's free, and it takes out a lot of stuff. Bob has been able to track schools that are not doing this with weird activity versus schools that are doing this. And it's stupid. It's free to do that, to just get rid of that first pass of known bad sites. Go in, get rid of root hits in your DNS. Don't use root hints if nothing's available. Put in the 2 DNS forwarders to the 2 OpenDNS, aka Cisco Umbrella sites, and at least step on. You can do that for free. You don't have to buy the product. And then at least step on the first pass of known bad things. Ads exploiting vulnerabilities. Again, every user should be on your network, should be a limited user. Everybody on this call should be a limited user on your workstation and sitting there day to day, sitting at your desk. Web filtering, iBoss, TrustWave, WebSense, whatever you do, filtering that stuff out. Patching isn't an option. Patching for the OS, patching for application, for security issues. Again, OpenDNS can trap some of that stuff out. URL social engineering. I know the RIC has an offering with KnowBe4. Some people have purchased that directly as well to basically do user education to launch fake phishing attacks against your users to train them not to click on things and see who's going rogue on you. Again, web filtering, spam filtering, patching, limited users, how you deal with that stuff. CryptoWorm, limited users. You should be implementing Microsoft AppLocker. File resource scanning, so you know when these things break out, so you can step on them really quick. And backups, including that air-gap backup, that backup that has no relation to your system. So if you get infected, it's your backup of last resort that the bad stuff can't get to. Now we get into the stuff that makes people squirm. No tech should be a domain admin or local admin in their day-to-day account. No one. I give the example years ago, tech locally was domain admin. They left their machine signed in and they went away for a long holiday weekend. Their machine was infected, ran the whole week, manning through the district, took everything out. I was at a school on Friday of last week. Every tech in the IT department is a local admin, or a domain admin sitting at their desk, doing their emails, surfing the web, whatever they're doing. That's a really bad deal. You shouldn't be a domain admin. You shouldn't be a local admin with your day-to-day account. Absolutely not. No tech, and this is a change of procedures, no tech should be signing on to a remote computer with a domain account. You're mainlining into the entire network if a domain admin account touches a remote computer. All right, here's the example. Some of you who have listened to my stuff or come to Tech Talk the last couple of times have heard this. This is a reality. This isn't theoretical. Machine out there in your world, it gets infected. It's a limited user. It's Johnny Student, limited user on a machine. But the machine has been compromised, you know, percent user profile, percent type stuff. All right, and so there's something bad lurking on this machine. Now, Scott, tech admin, comes along to do something on that machine, right? He logs into that machine. The Trojan is lying in wait. The Trojan basically goes, aha, I have rights to everything. The Trojan reaches out to Group Policy Management Council. The Trojan creates a group policy, that a software distribution policy that basically deploys the ransomware to every Windows device in your network, and then it creates a GPPE policy to create a scheduled task to launch the ransomware on every machine in your network. 120 minutes from now, you cease to exist. This is not theoretical. This is going on now. All right? So you go, how did that happen? It happened because you walked along with a domain admin account and you tripped over the Trojan lying in wait. It was infected. It was contained, so to speak. All right? And you innocently went to do what you do, and your entire world ceased to exist 2 hours later, and you didn't even know it until it was over. So we can't do that. If you have to, unsecured access points or unsecure endpoints should not be accessed by privileged accounts in the wild. When you leave your little tech office, you need to basically assume you're in the Wild West. If you're signing on with an ID, you need to not map to everything. You need to not have rights to anything. You need to be whatever minimally is required to do something. So you want to map one folder to updates and have an ID that's not a domain admin. You want to, you need to not expose rights to machines that you don't know what's going on. Use two-factor authentication for privileged accounts in a secure location. You got to start thinking about the tech office as like the castle on the hill, right? That you're going to be like just obsessive about security of those places. I talked in a previous tech talk, in Windows 10, the latest creators release, there's the Bluetooth Hello, where I can pair my cell phone to my workstation or laptop via Bluetooth. If I get up to go to the restroom or go to lunch, I'm probably taking my phone. If my phone gets a certain distance away from my machine, I will automatically lock the station. So I don't have to wait for whatever the group policy, screensaver timeout policy is. I am physically not there. It's using my phone as a presence indicator so that it just locks me out once I've walked away from my desk. Pereira has mentioned, and I mentioned in the last Tech Talk, that in the latest release there's this Business Hello. And the Business Hello, you can get a webcam that does infrared. And basically what happens is, I start walking up to my computer. The webcam sees it's me. It senses my heat signature, and it auto logs in as me, right? If I hold up a picture of me, it doesn't work because it needs the heat signature. You have things like Google Authenticator that you can tie to log in. You can do things like AuthAnvil with key fobs, RSA Secure. This is our future. We have to start doing this stuff. Using Run As, you're a limited user, Lowly Scott, and I sit here as Lowly Scott on my machine. I don't have rights to do anything on this network, and we would use Run As to, juice the rights to run Active Directory users or computers or something. Is insufficient. We can't be doing that stuff. One of the dangers is that these pass the hash attacks. So I get an ID on machine X, and now I try to pass the hash to these other machines, hoping that it's the same ID and password. Most of you on this call have the same local administrator password, maybe other local passwords. Maybe you have a handful of passwords depending on when you image machines, what passwords you use. But you probably have a ton of machines all with the same password. We had an email a week or two ago from a local school and district, and what happened is the kid wanted to install something on his machine, and he was a limited user, and he downloaded a hacking tool, and he hacked the local administrator password on the machine in order to do whatever he was going to do. All right, and he was just trying to install software. He wasn't out trying to necessarily, take over the network. But that act, which he was successful at as a high school student, basically, theoretically, for most of you, if it happened, you exposed local admin down the line. All right. That's scary stuff. Stop all tech work from your servers. We've been talking about how you need to not go to your server, go to a management server, use the remote server administration tools from your desk. But this is getting more and more serious. No one should remote to your servers for any reason other than patching and occasional server-based application installation. No one should be running any management consoles to your servers, right? From your servers, right? So if you need to do DNS, you need to do DHCP, you need to do Active Directory using computers, you need to do Active Directory Administrative Center, you need to do AD Manager Plus, whatever it is, you need to do it not on your servers. You shouldn't go there. You shouldn't, there's no reason for you to go there. You shouldn't web browse to your servers. We've gone through the years, open your web filter to allow web browsing, because we got to do this, that, and the other thing. You want to turn around, you want to make all those servers not web browse. You want to make them useless except for what they need to do updates, management from SCCM or CASE or WSIS. You want to make it that if you want to actually do work, you don't go there. No one should ever remote into your servers from a remote location. So I shouldn't go out to that classroom, you know, Johnny, student, limited user, and remote back to the server to do something. Bad deal. If I need to do something, I should go back to the secure IT tech office, that castle, get behind the gate, and do what I need to do in a secure work environment. Now, that's a pain in the butt. That's going to make you much more inefficient. That's going to, you know, make it a lot longer to do things. That's just life. You want to be alive, you want to have a stable network, that's what you must do, right? If you're out and about in your world, you're in the Wild West, you have to assume, back to what I said in many tech talks, you know, a couple years ago, the head of the NSA says, you have to assume that the bad guy is sitting in the chair next to you. How do you design your network? Knowing the bad guy's already in the room, he's sitting next to you, right? And they're using very advanced machine learning tools to hurt you. Domain controllers, they're absolutely sacred. No one should go there. No one should touch them. No one should remote to do anything to them. Updates, just very, very specific things. It's not a place to do work. SCCM is sacred. It mainlines into everything. If you have Case or Alteris or whatever you're doing, right? It mainlines into everything. Back to that ransomware. It created this Active Directory software distribution policy to launch itself. If it can get to your SCCM, if it can get to your Case, whatever, these things are getting more and more sophisticated. You can't let anything that can mainline into your world be exposed. SQL is sacred. It runs your most complicated things on your network. There's often a lot of personally identifiable information in there. And, you know, you guys already know that you got to be really afraid of getting personal identifiable information leaking out of your network. All right, we got to limit access to it. Physical security, physical servers, especially DCs, limited access to the DCs, limited access to the physical servers in general. UEFI has this secure boot process, right? Protecting me from booting underneath to get data, whatever. Firmware updates. A couple months ago we had the issue where Apple had a whole bunch of servers that they were putting into production. They found malware in the firmware, this flashware stuff. We mentioned in the last Tech Talk that people are taking switches. You go out to buy a 2950 switch, Cisco switch, aftermarket on eBay because you just need a random switch and it's cheap. People are taking those switches, they're altering the BIOS on them, the firmware, putting malware in there, and then you're buying, you know, from this untrusted source, and all of a sudden you have crap in your network. Purchase only from trusted sources. If you want to be really anal, you know, they had these TPM chips with encrypted boot and encrypted storage, make it pretty useless even if you're standing there. Virtual security. If I can get at your hypervisor, I can get at all the servers running under your virtual farm. The security of the hypervisor environment is essential. Use only vendor-supported current hypervisors. If you're still on VMware 5 or what have you, you need this summer, you need to like immediately make a plan. VMware is at 6.5. Patch VMware and VMware tools. Evan and Prayer have been going around now with our clients and doing that security patch for VMware. Why? Because VMware announced there was a security hole in the side of the boot. And so they've been going around doing those patches. Limit the vCenter access. If you're in Hyper-V, they say that the Hyper-V shielded machines do provide some degree of protection in this thing, in this area. Micro-segmentation. We're already generally doing, here's our server VLAN, here's our SAN VLAN, here's our different workstation, wireless VLANs, public VLANs. But we need to get more specific. We need to create VLANs that only contain domain controllers. We need to create a VLAN that only contains those tech workstations in the castle behind the gate that we're going to be obsessive about protecting. And we really need to get aggressive on fine-grained network access controls, who can see what from where, and use that network control to block access to things you have no business seeing on the network, regardless of operating system. Enforce secure protocols. No RDP exposed to the internet. All this WannaCry stuff and NSA exploits, they're basically people who are exposing RDP or 445 to the internet directly. I mean, if you do that, you're just stupid, right? I mean, if you need internet access, you need VPN, you need some sort of remote access gateway, whatever. Just changing the port on the RDP from 3389 to something else doesn't get it done. They're going to scan the ports. They're going to scan protocols. All right. The reason that we didn't really see much of any of this WannaCry problem in the United States, except FedEx, which I really don't understand, is because most people didn't expose this stuff to the internet, so stuff couldn't launch to keep going. The new recommendation I'm reading, and I've spent like a week on this topic trying to assemble all this stuff for y'all in terms of what the current thinking is. But basically they want you to evolve from LDAP to secure LDAP, 636 instead of 389. You want to be doing NTLM2 only protocols. The WannaCry one was the disable SMB version 1. You can do that actually via GPO, and hopefully all of you have done the patch by now. Remember, there's even the patch for XP and Windows Server 2003. Even though they were discontinued, Microsoft was so weirded out that they released, their first patch in 3 years for those things to fix that. Now, a lot of you have these multifunction printer, scanner, copiers that have down-level BIOS firmware that basically, when you disable SMB version 1, you take out the ability to scan to a Windows share. So a bunch of you have dumbed down your networks to accommodate your multifunction devices. You really need to beat up on your vendors, if you are one of those people, to fix that. And if you can't, you need to disable it anyway and then set up FTP scanning, which is a pain in the butt to manage and maintain for any sort of large amount of people, but it works perfectly fine. But this is a big issue. I know a lot of you guys have that issue, that you dumb down your network so that you can make your scanner from your multifunction copier work. There's an article there on what Microsoft considers as proper RDP security that you can read. Alternatives, we've said this for a long time. Create some management servers and remote to them in a separate place, as opposed to going to the data servers, the DCs themselves. You get into an issue, though, that, stupid stuff. Basically, VMware vSphere Web Console, right, which is what they want you to use in 6.0 and 6.5, right? But it needs Flash for some bizarre reason in order to do the most robust management. Well, Flash is an insecure thing. It keeps on having exploits, right? Same thing. Equalogic SAN needs Java to run the console. Well, Java changes with the wind and has all these exploits. So you may very well need to create two management servers, one with Flash and Java that has the less secure stuff, and the other one for all the other tools, ADUC, blah blah blah. One thing separate, but it fits the theme. But Prayer has mentioned this anyway. Is he's feeling that it's time that all you guys running AD Manager Plus, and I think most of you are running it off a domain controller. He's seeing some evidence that is suggesting that we move AD Manager Plus to its own management server, which then can run this other stuff too. So that's a recommendation regardless of the other stuff. If you need help doing that, it's not hard to move AD Manager Plus, and you're not going to lose anything. But if you need help doing that, let us know. Leverage Server Manager, leverage the RSAT tools, which allow you to run, the stuff from your desktop with the appropriate rights. You should do that. Again, we have no need in today's world to go to those DCs, to go to those data servers, except in very, very specific cases. All right. Talked about this before, but here's the problem. By rule, authenticated users are on every group policy object that are created. So, what's going on? There's this program called Bloodhound that was shown at Black Hat. So we go back to our example. Johnny Student, limited user on a workstation, is infected with some sort of Trojan. Johnny Student is a limited user. A limited user is an authenticated user. The Trojan, bad actor, is basically going out and reading every group policy object because it has the right to do that as an authenticated user. Limited Johnny Student can do that. And what's happening through machine learning is the Trojan is mapping your network. And it's reading each policy, and it's seeing what you do, where you do it. And basically, I know many of you have policies to create local admins via GPPE, right? So you have a policy that says in this lab that the building sysop can be local admin on these machines. In this OU, you have a policy that says the psychologist is a local admin because you didn't want to mess with the rights for the special ed software because it's too much of a pain in the butt. So what's happening is that Trojan lying in wait, even though Johnny Student limited user can't execute anything, it's building a map, and now it knows the places and the machine names and the OUs of where you've distributed local admin, where you're doing security, where you've weakened security. It knows all that stuff, and it reports home to the mothership. And wouldn't you know, now we find out that Janine at the elementary school is the building sysop that has the local admin rights, and she starts getting phishing emails to try to forcibly trick her to click and let the Trojan sit in a place that has more rights. Or the pass to hash attack, where I have compromised an account, I look at the other machines, see if this account has ever logged in there, and I try to jump machines because I'm trying to find machines that I want to be on. All right? So, couple things here. We cannot let the bad guys use group policy against us. We need to keep, even though Johnny Student limited admin or limited user is infected with the bad guy, we need to keep him stupid. We need to make sure that they don't know anything about our network. All right, so how do we do that? Well, the first thing is all the security settings in your network in group policy are on the computer side, not the user side, the computer side. So if you're setting local admins, if you're setting disable SMB v1, if you're setting use NTLM v2 only, whatever your security thing is, who's the users that are allowed to remote desktop terminal services, all that stuff, that's all set on the computer side. So what we need to do is go into every policy that's a computer side policy, and we need to remove authenticated users from the list. And we need to replace it with domain computers on the list instead. So Johnny Student's account is compromised, but hopefully the computer account is not compromised. So now Johnny Student can't read that policy, and Johnny Student can't report home to the mothership of where and what security we have in our network. All right. I've talked about at the last Tech Talk, if you were here, we have the ability, number one, in a couple minutes to bam through all your policies and make sure that Domain Computers is on it. If you recall, a year ago, they changed the rights if you were doing security filtering, and a bunch of you had all sorts of policies that fell off the map because it was authenticated users and you were testing for high school teachers or whatever, and then the policy quit running. The solution was to put Domain Computers on those policies too. Well, we can do that in a couple minutes time, and then I can do an Active Directory edit. So once we've cleaned up everything so that everybody at least has Domain Computers, when you create a new default policy, Domain Computers will be on it by rule. All right, because that's the other problem you had. We've cleaned a bunch of you guys up so it works, and then you create new stuff which defaults the wrong way, and then stuff starts not working again. So we can do that. Probably very little time. You could call the office if you want that done, but we don't want, regardless of that, we don't want authenticated users on any computer side policy. None at all. It will allow the bad guys to read your security. So you just go through whatever's computer side, you basically pull authenticated users and replace Domain Computers. You should do that right away. All right. Now, one of the things, the two smartest people in the world and group policy that I listen to, this is the guy that didn't train me, but I have great respect for. He's like, well, at some point they're going to come back and they're going to figure out how to hack the Domain Computer account. And then they're going to read all this stuff again, and we're going to be back in the same boat. Well, if you want to be super anal, what you can do is you can create custom computer groups, remove the Domain Computers from those groups, and create a finance computer group, create a finance server group, create a guidance computer group, create a guidance server group, whatever, so that the Domain Computer account doesn't have rights there, so that you can protect the holy of holies, so to speak, from doing stuff. You should, again, creating these silos where even though you have domain admin rights, your rights are no good here. Go in and remove domain admin type accounts from any policy, read edit, and put some other ID there. So if we're going to manage a group policy and I'm sitting out there out and about in the Wild West of the elementary school, I'm going to not remote, I'm going to go back to my desk or have someone back behind the castle walls, go in, sign-on, not as SCAT admin, not as administrator domain admin, but as GPO admin or some completely different ID and affect the change. SCAT admin can't get it done. Domain admin can't get it done. Again, to limit the exposure to the system. So we just talked about all that. Make sure computer policies contain only computer stuff and user policies contain only user stuff. And at the beginning of time, you know, it was like cram everything in here because it's faster, and you know, this has evolved greatly, and like all good Microsoft things, you know, you run you run the best practice analyzer on Exchange that says do this. You run it 6 months later when you do the updates to best practice analyzer, and it tells you to undo this and do the opposite. And there's some of this going on with all that. If you have policies that are mixed, copy it to a new name, change the new name, go into the computer policy, disable the user, go into the copy policy, disable the computer, apply them appropriately. All right, so now we get to some serious stuff. So back to the premise that most of you on this webinar probably have a local administrator account or accounts that you have out there, and you know, when you sysprep and whatever, that you're, at least for batches, waves of computers, you're using the same administrator account. So that kid who hacked the local administrator account and the pass the hash thing, it will allow bad things to run rampant through your network on the workstation. There's been a lot of talk recently as to how to deal with this issue. Oh my gosh, I got 3,000 machines and I got 1,000 a piece, each using the same local administrator account. How the heck am I supposed to manage it if it's not all the same? Well, Microsoft has a solution, the local administrator password solution, LAPS, to control local administrator passwords. It's free. And it seems like all roads, when you read all this stuff, lead to LAPS. Basically what they do is they put an MSI out on the workstations or the servers. You push it out with software distribution if you don't have Case or SCCM or Alteryx or something. All right. What it does is then on whatever clock your fine-grained password policies are, and hopefully every single person on this call has fine-grained password policies. If you do not have fine-grained password policies, you should implement them as part of your summer process. If you need help with that, you should call us because you need fine-grained password policies that your tech admins have to change every whatever 30 days. Your you know, finance people every 60 days, your guidance people every 60 days, your teachers every 120 days, your students, you know, once a year, whatever, you know, make it up. All right, you need fine-grained computer policy, password policies if you don't have it. But so whatever your password policy is, right, when it's time, what's going to happen is LAPS is going to change the password on each one of your local administrator accounts to a unique password. You have 3,000 machines, you're going to have 3,000 unique local admin passwords. The fact that that student hacked one machine with one local administrator password, or the bad thing got on the psychologist machine that was a local administrator because you were lazy about the weirdness of the software, special ed software, and didn't want to play with the rights, it now is mitigated dramatically because you're an island. That's okay, I got one thing that's messed up. But then you go, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember 3,000 passwords? Well, what it does is it populates back to Active Directory an attribute that you can then read. So you're going to go out to the psychologist's machine and you want to sign on as local administrator, and you're going to go look it up and you're going to get the password and you're going to go do what you need to do. And when you go to the next machine, you're going to come back into the castle behind the walls in your secure location, and you're going to look it up, and then you're going to go out, and you're going to do what you do. And that's how you fix that. All right? It's free. Rename the domain administrator account, rename the local administrator account, rename and disable guests. Do not enumerate SIDs. Now, unless you're doing something really weird, that kind of isn't really the case anymore. Up through Windows 2000, if I renamed administrator, the account ended in the SID with 500. So I could rename the administrator Bob Adams, and I could ask, the bad guy could ask for show me the account that ends in 500, and it would say Bob Adams, thereby negating the fact that I renamed it to something totally obscure. Generally, that's turned off in your network starting with Windows Server 2003, because then it says, I'm not going to tell, don't you ask, I won't tell you. Don't allow local admin to workstations for users. Less and less software requires that. Force text to use non-domain admin accounts, right, to go out and do what you do. No autonomous accounts in groups, no autonomous accounts in rights. Again, authenticated users, we want to try to not have that moving forward. And so you go, well, how the heck am I going to do any work if I can't go out there and I'm like going out as a limited user, no better than whomever? Delegation, delegation, delegation. All right? You don't need a domain admin account to join a computer to the domain. You can create a limited user account called join, and you can basically delegate the join function. You can delegate password resets. You can delegate account unlocks. We can delegate DHCP administration, DNS administration. You know, that's the future. Limited IDs with delegation for specific tasks as limited IDs. All right. Have different authority IDs for different functions, Exchange Admin, SQL, and SCCM. I've given the example. If I sign on to our SCCM server here as domain administrator, the only thing I can do is delete the server. It won't run. I can't get at anything. If I sign on as Scott admin, it won't run. I got to sign on as a different ID. That's the silo that's only good for that function. Don't let anyone read group membership for authority IDs, domain admins. This is what's going on. So back to our limited user, Johnny Student, the Trojan's sitting out there. The Trojan's stuck on this workstation because Johnny Student is a limited user and it's got no place to go. Well, authenticated users, Johnny Student, can read Active Directory, can read the OU structure, can map it, can send it home via, using machine learning, map it all out, send it home to the mothership, right, as to what's going on. It can read your domain admin members, right? So it finds out that, back to my example of Friday, that in this school district, every tech sitting at their desk is a domain admin, and many are local admins as well, sitting at their desk. Now I have all their names, right? All of a sudden they're getting phishing attacks because I know that these guys are the domain admins and have the keys to the kingdom. And so I've read that as a limited user. So what do? We need to move all the IDs that are privileged IDs, all the computers that are your tech computers, all the groups that are protected groups. Now this screen shows which ones can be moved and which ones can't, and the ones that can't be moved are already protected. We need to move them to a protected OU. So we create an OU, we move all these IDs that have extra rights, all the computers that have extra rights, into this OU, and then we basically block the ability of limited user, Johnny student, authenticated user from reading who those people are. We want to keep these people stupid, right? So we create OU, we put all the computers and we put all the users, the tech users that have extra rights behind this OU. We block inheritance, set rights explicitly, and that way they're just blind. They cannot see who our admins are at all. We need to do this. Turn on auditing on the OU. Now I have this written out. It's a bit of an eye chart. Lisa can get you the PDF, which has all these slides in it. So we want to turn on auditing to the OU so we see when stuff works on. The other thing we want to do is we want to turn on enhanced auditing via group policy. This is one of these to walk away today and go turn this on if it's not already on. Because this will start telling us more detail if we start looking for things in terms of auditing. And basically where it is, as all good security settings, it's on the computer side under local policy security set options, audit, force audit policy subcategory settings, and make that enabled. And what that does is now the audit logs, if they're turned on, if auditing is turned on, they're more chatty and they tell you more detail that we can then search for. As you're moving all this stuff around, don't move domain controllers. Bad things happen. They have their own OU. Leave them where they were intended. On securing the IDs and groups with the OU structured, this is the document. Again, Lisa can give you the PDF. This is stupid stuff. Remove zombie servers. We retired this server. We turned it off. Somehow the power went off. We had a cold start. Turn on. Now I got these zombie servers that I think are off, that I'm not paying attention to, that nobody else is paying attention to, that's an unsupported, discontinued, unpatched operating system sitting out there on my network. The bad guys will find them sooner or later, and they'll set them up as your infection station. All right? This summer, go through. If the server is retired, kill it. I did a presentation at Tech Talk 2 times ago about removing servers from VMware to get rid of them. If this is gone, make it gone. Remove all unsupported OSs. I was really surprised with the WannaCry thing that all of a sudden I had people that I thought I knew a fair bit about their networks, and they started contacting me because they were fessing up that they were still running production Windows XP and production Windows Server 2003, and what were they going to do? Now Microsoft that Sunday finally decided to release the patch to those people too, but they were, you know, when it's like, oh, you got to have it gone, well, they kind of shut up so no one yelled at them. But, you know, here they are, very exposed, running this stuff, and then they're like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Retire it, kill it, get it off your network. If that applies to you, do that. Remove all retired computers, remove all disabled accounts. Some of you, you know, the seniors are going to graduate, you're going to disable them, you're going to keep them for some period of time, all right. But all those other guys, get rid of them, right? If you're running AD Manager Plus, there's some really nice reports in there that tell you this stuff, all right. Validate it, the membership of all your protected groups. Go through the groups. Who are these people? Is Joe still here? Is Steve still here? Does Steve need these rights? Does Joe need these rights in the light of what I just have been talking about? Remove them. Less is more. And yeah, it's more of a pain. Implement Microsoft App Locker. Microsoft App Locker is Microsoft's solution to do the % user profile thing. The reason that limited Johnny Student got infect it is because Johnny Student, as a limited user, has rights to percent user profile percent, right? AppLocker allows you to deal with that. It's free, all right? However, you need to be at Windows 10 Enterprise or Windows 7 Enterprise to get this done, right? Notice how I didn't say Windows 7 Pro. Notice how I didn't say Windows 10 Pro that came on your preloads, or Windows 10 Education, or Windows 10 S. I said Windows 10 Enterprise. If you have a Microsoft Campus agreement, you need to leverage those agreements. The only OSs you should be putting out if you want to be able to secure all this stuff. And Windows 10 also has the extra GPO settings that aren't in Education and aren't in Pro. Is you want to be putting out Windows 10 Enterprise. And yes, it's weird is why you have this Education thing that doesn't do everything, and why do you have the Windows 10 S thing, which does even less. It is kind of weird, but Enterprise is what gives you the tools to better secure your network. If you don't have these things, then you're forced to go into software protection. The nice thing about AppLocker, if you saw my AppLocker presentation, is you can run it in audit mode. So I don't even know what I'm supposed to secure in percent user profile percent, right? But you can turn on audit mode and you can see what's running out of there, that RealPlayer is running out of there, and the Smartboard software is running out of there, and a bunch of other things that were written really poorly are running out of there. And then, so you can know what you don't know just from running the audit for a while, not blocking anything, and then you can escalate that to say, you know, put your rules in and say, here's my rules to do and to not do, and then it would say in audit mode, I would block this because, you know, whatever, and then you can tweak those rules, and then you can turn it on live and still get that data. In software protection, you're just kind of blind. Create a rule, see what happens. You know, look at some machines, create a rule, play with it, tweak it, but you're kind of blind to what in fact is going on because there is no auditing. It's just, you know, I will tinker with it long enough to get it done. And you can certainly get it done with software protection, but it's harder. Implement whitelists and blacklists, right? Here's the stuff that we run. This is back to 1997 for some of us, right, in terms of doing these things. You got to patch, right? And you got to patch not just when WannaCry comes out and we go, oh my gosh, it's like there's this stuff out there. You have to patch routinely. You have to patch the OS security updates. There's a whole lot of other updates. You patch them, you don't patch them, that's your business. But you got to patch the security updates. And you have to do it for applications too, Flash, Java, other applications, right? You can use SCCM, WSCase, Alteryx, other things. There's add-ons to WSIS and SCCM to see third-party software to make it easier to do. You got to do this. You have to have a routine. This is not optional. PCI standards. PCI standards are the standards that, you know, I'm accepting credit cards. So you come and you give me your credit card and I'm going to swipe it and do whatever. So there's this standard of certification you need to make PCI in order to do credit cards. The rule for them is that if vendor X or vendor Y comes out with an OS or a security update for OS or application security or switch, firewall, blah, 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 you are obligated within 30 days to apply that security update. So Cisco comes out with something 30 days from now, it must be in place across the board in your world. Microsoft comes out with something 30 days, it must be in place across your world. Now, it creates a dilemma because we know there's Patch Tuesday for Microsoft and Dead Body Wednesday, where we find out all the things that were screwed up and all the stuff that blows up and then Microsoft goes and withdraws the patch or tweaks the patch, and maybe the third or fourth week of the month reissues the patch. So it creates a dilemma with some of these guys. They're saying, well, they release a patch that blows up my stuff, and I'm obligated to apply the patch, but that will kill me, so therefore, if I leave the patch off, now I'm violating, compliance. So when Microsoft pulls the patch, that makes it easier, because now it doesn't exist. But what does that tell you with Dead Body Wednesday? You need to have a systematic way of testing the patches, right? You have the tech workstations, you have a lab that you can easily get to, some servers that you can get to, and you're going to take these patches and you're going to apply them, systematically after they come out into this test bed where you can stare at the servers, you can stare at these workstations and see if this stuff works or not. And then if it works, then you're going to push it out. I talked the last Tech Talk about rationale of prayer and others in terms of patching strategy. So hopefully you were here to hear that. Windows firewalls must be on. I run around and there are a lot of people that have firewalls off. Why are they off? I don't know why they're off. They're off because, 7 years ago, somebody made a decision to turn them off. There was something that was in conflict. We had to get something running, and we just turned stuff off. All right. Windows firewalls need to be on all servers and all workstations. They need to be properly configured. If there's something turning them on that blocks something that needs to run, we need to step up and we need to fix that. And we need to create the rules. We can push out firewall rules via group policy, so it's no big deal. Once we figure out what it is that needs to be done, they need to be on. We need to create as many walls as we can to slow down this stuff, to keep it from seeing things. Now, yesterday when we did this presentation, there was a question that came in at this point, and the question was, what if I have somebody else's Windows firewall? So what if I have a Symantec firewall or AVG or, whatever alternative firewall? I think the message is you need to have a firewall that's on the workstations and servers, and it needs to be maintained and properly configured. I don't know that there's magic, whether a Symantec firewall for Windows or a Windows firewall for Windows. I don't know that that's, do whatever you want to do there. But I think you have to have something in place, and you have to be able to manage it. So if what you put up from someone else is not easily manageable in terms of configuring policies centrally, then Microsoft does a pretty good job. Software security. I think in the last Tech Talk or the one before, I mentioned that Kaspersky is reporting that legit software again is showing up from legit vendors, is showing up with malware embedded in it, and it's scary malware because what it does is it jumps out of the application, goes into memory, not on disk, does its data collection by scanning and whatever machine learning, reports home to mom, and then disappears when the session ends. So it never hits the C drive, it never hits the servers, so there's no file activity, so the traditional antivirus scanners see nothing. They're blind to the fact that this is going on. There's reports of compromised ISOs, right? So you get a hacked Win2K12R2 ISO, and now you're putting out, malware embedded Windows or other applications. Make sure you get your ISOs from the vendor. Make sure you have the real ISO. There's often like stuff you can do in terms of checksum and whatever. Many of these things have that to make sure you've actually gotten the legit package. About 6 weeks ago now, HPE had an issue with a laptop that a context audio driver had a clear text logger keylogger installed in it. Now, it wasn't using it for malicious purposes, but if you're telling me that there's a clear text file on my workstation that has everything I type, my domain admin passwords, my whatever into the keylogger, you don't think that some bad guy's going to come along and figure that out and pick up those files and analyze those files, machine learning, and now have credentials to go launch broader attacks? They're going to do that. There's a new thing, hyper secure environments. You know, they have this thing called certification of clean platform, and that's kind of like the police, that you have a chain of custody of you have a chain of custody of the hardware, the firmware, the software, etc., to essentially that they can guarantee that from their world as it put together, as it was flashed, as it was at whatever, to your door and racked, that it is what it says it is. So that's a new thing as people are becoming more and more aware of these bad things. This is an interesting concept I heard a couple weeks ago. Okay, you're telling me I can't be domain admin, and you're telling me, you know, I got to be lowly user, and you're telling me that you can't web browse as domain admin, and you can't web browse on a server. And I just got my desktop computer here, or my laptop, and how am I supposed to get this done? All right. Well, one is use a management server, go to that. But if I got to do it on one box, the suggestion is that your host OS, the OS loaded on the box, your desktop or your laptop, is the one that's completely shut down. No Flash, no Java, no Silverlight, no internet browsing, complete limited access. That's your secure spot. And then you're going to do, like on my Windows 10 laptop, I have a Hyper-V with a Windows 10 Enterprise VM inside my laptop. That's your dirty one. That's the one you use to surf to the web, to go look at your bank, to go look at Amazon, to go whatever, if you got to do this on everything in your life on one machine. All right, that's the one exposed. And the rationale for that is it's much harder for the dirty OS VM, if it gets compromised, to infect the clean OS host underneath it. But it's very easy for the clean host OS underneath it to infect the VMs that are running under it. So if you have to do it that way, that's the rationale, is that the first OS should be the one, when you turn on your laptop, it should be functionally very limited in what you do. And then you launch your VM, and you live in your VM, and you do the things you want to go out and do on the web or what have you, but you protect the integrity of the host OS. Realizing, as we get in the home stretch here, realizing that we're talking about this concept of limited rights and delegation. Microsoft, Prayers talked about this before, come up with something called Just Enough Administration. And it's available by default in Windows Server 2016 and Windows 10. And then there's patches for the older OS, which I'll get to in a minute. And basically it goes to delegated administration for anything that can be managed with PowerShell. So the concept is we're reducing the number of administrators on your machines by using virtual accounts or service accounts to perform privileged actions on behalf of these limited users. We have these commandlets that can be run, and then it logs what you're doing. So, you know, back to this lateral attack, past the hash. I break this machine, and then I start hopping through your network, okay, to do bad things to you. But you get to, okay, we need to do DNS, right? Legit thing. DNS is on your DC. We said you can't go to your DC. We said we want you to be a limited user. Okay. DNS administrators need local admin to fix issues. Okay, we don't want to give that to you. Basically, by using just enough administration via PowerShell, we can give the DNS administrators who are limited users access over all that stuff. Okay, so now the person who's charged with DNS administration can essentially, as a limited user, do all that DNS stuff they want, not having ever knowing the domain admin credentials. Okay, and we can do that down the line, DHCP, blah, blah, blah. Just enough administration. Now here's just enough administration. We said it's pre-installed in Windows Server 2016 and it's pre-installed in Windows 10. You notice that most of you are Windows 2012 or 2012 R2. If you download the Windows Management Framework 5.1, aka PowerShell 5.1, you can do everything in Windows Server 2012 R2 or 2012. You can do everything, JEA. If you have only 2008 R2 and you download it, you can do everything except it doesn't understand the concept of service accounts. So you basically functionally can do almost everything. And again, on the client side, you really want to be at Windows 10 Enterprise Creators Update, basically is the .NET on the client side to be able to do these things. You can do most things with Windows 7. Again, it doesn't understand service accounts. PowerShell 5.0 or higher if I want preferred Windows Management Framework, aka PowerShell. That's where you get it. We're almost done here. Got a couple more slides. In Windows 10 Enterprise, we have something called Device Guard, which is a hardening framework in Windows 10 Enterprise that you can implement. And there's a credential guard feature as well. There's a TechNet blog there that you can read about. But again, these features are only available for you to implement. They're there by default. They're only available Windows 10 Enterprise. To wrap this up, Microsoft has this new thing called Privileged Access Management, PAM. Basically, it kind of takes the philosophy. Your Active Directory network is compromised. It's a cesspool. Bad stuff is going on. It's the Wild West. I don't know what's going on out there, right? I walk out there with, Scott Admin, and you just told me I'm going to blow up the world and destroy myself. So basically what Microsoft's suggesting, in Privileged Access Management is you create this separate Active Directory, which is your castle. They use the word bastion, right? And they basically, you isolate yourselves in the castle in this hyper-secure environment. And then what you do is basically throw these commands via trust relationships over the wall from your highly secure bunker into the cesspool of your Active Directory Wild West network where your users work to do specific things to prevent the ability of privileged accounts being stolen. You can read about it at that link. There's things that cost money behind it. The term you see associated with this is Red Forest, and that's what it is. All right. Essentially, I don't trust my own network. I'm creating another network, which is a hyper-secure network, and I'm going to implement all this stuff to jump over the castle wall into the cesspool of my network to figure it out and then jump back. This is Microsoft's little chart for how that works. And then to wrap this up, here are that chart is a bit of a high chart for documents. So here are the documents that go with that. So I know we went over a little bit, but that's the information that I had. Lisa, if you want, if you could stop the recording, please. And I guess I'll open it up to questions. Lisa has the PDF that she can share with you of these screenshots. There's a lot of meat in here. We could go on forever in terms of different aspects of this. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that is easily done. These are things we can certainly help you with. If you have questions, you can do the chat. Just uncheck the record there, Lisa, and you could unmute the phones too. I don't have that control. Okay, well, we'll go with it then. All right, so anybody have any questions at this moment? We're certainly available offline as well. You can type in the chat box.